I'm Lady Catherine Williams Julian. I am a domestic violence survivor. I am a member of the Violence Against Women Committee as well as the Reentry Committee. How I became a member was through Sister Mary Nerney, who I met at Rose M. Singer, where I was incarcerated for an incident surrounding domestic violence. I was a domestic violence victim for 18 years. I went to prison in 1997 for defending myself against my batterer, which in turn, Steps to End Family Violence enrolled me in one of their programs to assist me with having domestic violence being the core factor in my trial.
Well, there's actually huge correlations between histories of trauma, sexual assault, incest, rape, domestic violence, and incarceration across globally and across the U.S. And there about 90% of women report being survivors of some sort of violence or trauma in their lifetimes prior to their incarceration. So there's definitely a direct correlation between intimate partner violence and incarceration and pathways to prisons.
Once I was given a sentence and I went to prison, when I came home, Sister Mary then in turn introduced me to the Coalition of Women's Prisoners that would help me empower myself as well as heal and be an advocate for domestic violence.
I'm testifying here today to speak about the importance of the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act and how many lives will be empowered by it.
The Women in Prison Project is one of 3 projects at the Correctional Association. I should say the Correctional Association has a unique statutory mandate dating back to 1846 that allows us unfettered access to state prisons, allows us to monitor conditions. And we have our Women in Prison Project, which really focuses on trying to change the criminal justice system using a gender lens. And we also monitor conditions using the Correctional Association's mandate in the women's prisons.
So the Women in Prison Project of the Correctional Association basically staffs the Coalition for Women Prisoners. Our membership includes formerly incarcerated women and men, social workers, academics, lawyers, family members with incarcerated loved ones, and just, people from the faith community, folks from all walks of life who really come together and are interested in reforming the way the criminal justice system impacts women.
Through the coalition, I've done quite a few speaking engagements, presentation on domestic violence and the criminal justice system and the linkage between the two.
One major issue that we work on is around kind of the intersection of trauma and women's incarceration. Domestic violence really affects women in prison in staggering numbers. And so we really believe that trauma and women's incarceration are inextricably linked. And there's no way to talk about DV, domestic violence, without thinking about women in prison. And on the flip side, there's no way to talk about women in prison without recognizing that trauma has played an integral role in women's kind of pathway into the criminal justice system.
In coming to the coalition, I met more women that were also very empowering to me. They motivated me, they gave me courage, they let me know that I had a voice, that what I had to say mattered, and that even though I was incarcerated and I had made some mistakes, I still had power to invoke change in society.
The reality is that women's part will make the world go around, right? And we come from women. We have mothers. I have a mother, a daughter, nieces, sisters. So advocating for women in prison or women who's charged with these so-called offenses, it's like advocating for my family.
The Coalition for Women Prisoners has been tremendously effective in its impact. One area is legislative change that we've achieved. So we've been the lead force in successfully passing a couple of different bills over the past couple years. One, and it's all a coalition effort, so very much partnership with organizations, with individuals around the table, and all of our campaigns involve and are led by formerly incarcerated women and people who are most directly impacted in partnership with the Women in Prison Project and with all the other organizations that are at the table. So one piece of legislation we led the effort to pass was legislation that banned the practice of shackling incarcerated pregnant women during labor, during delivery, and during postpartum recovery. And it's pretty astounding you would need legislation to ban that kind of a barbaric practice, but we do. And so we were successful in passing that law in 2009.
For Advocacy Day, we train the members. Anyone can sign up. We train them in the office, and I go out to different organizations, community-based organizations, to do trainings for their clients. And then they we sign them up after they've been trained. We assign them to buses according to what borough they can travel to easiest. And then we go to Albany. We set up 3 meetings per team. There's about 5 or 6 people on each team, and they meet with at least 3 legislators for that day.
Yes. I remember when I first came home last year, and I took my first bus trip to Albany to go speak to the legislature. I don't know, I totally enjoyed the bus trip. And I felt like it was my first bus trip without shackles. I was like, yeah, I'm on a bus and the shackles are off my feet and off my hands, and I could just get up and move around and just enjoy it and eat and just have fun, and just, it was like a camaraderie. It was just a unification. It was a purpose. It was a purpose-driven trip.
How I got involved was just reading a flyer one day and thinking that I wanted to help advocate, because I have been through, the domestic violence before. So I just kind of read that on the flyer one day, and I thought I want to be a part of that.
So specifically, the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act does 2 things. The bill would allow judges to sentence a DV survivor convicted of a crime directly related to abuse to either a lower sentence or, in the best case scenario, to an alternative to incarceration program in the community. And the second thing the bill does is that it would allow currently incarcerated domestic violence survivors to apply to the courts, and if they meet the same test that their crime was directly related to abuse, they would be able to get resentenced if the judge felt that they met the criteria, and to come home sooner.
Made me feel like my voice would help them to understand it better. To the legislation and to the senators and the assembly people, my voice would help them to see it as a real issue, something that just shouldn't be ignored. Something that's someone that can bring it right to the front. And me going through it myself, what better person to advocate for them? They need to understand that what domestic violence really is, and helping these women would be much more better than just locking them up and throwing away the key. These women need treatment. These women need to learn how to start life all over again. These women need to feel like they belong somewhere, that society has not condemned them for going through what they've gone through or doing whatever they have done. They need to be forgiven. They need to learn how to forgive themselves and learn healthy relationships and how to begin life process again.
My name wasn't Kim. My name was 92G 1597.
When I look out over the crowd and I'm thinking that all of these people are thinking that I'm that important, that they would listen. And I don't think there was like really a dry eye when I finished speaking, but including mine. But like I said, after I finished speaking, I just felt like a burden was gone. Like I'm no longer ashamed of it. I'm no longer holding it in. I'm letting people in. I'm letting people understand what this is. And if I can be an advocate for many more women to come, I would love to. But I remember the most important part was that I'm here to advocate for those that cannot advocate for themselves. And that's what I really felt like I was helping somebody else that didn't have a voice, that couldn't be there that day.
I really am driven, and I think most people in the coalition are also driven by this profound inspiration of the people who are most directly affected, really being courageous and brave and focused and specific in giving voice to their experiences, giving voice to their expertise, and really stepping up to make the changes that we know need to happen, and having the privilege to work in partnership with such a diverse coalition, with such a diverse group that's really committed to and is inspired by the women who are leading, the women who are most directly affected.
I think that the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act is critical legislation that was created by not only members of the coalition on the outside, but women in prison currently who are our Violence Against Women on the committee on the inside at Bedford Hills. And so it's legislation that was created by those impacted by domestic violence and incarceration, survivor defendants, by policy members and direct service providers, and really talks to the needs of reducing the time that women who are survivor defendants can do in prison, as well as finding more alternatives to incarceration programs for survivor defendants.
I would have to say that my inspiration for the work is my daughter. I am a single mom, and all the former boyfriends and friends that would go in and out of jail, and I would see this happening all the time, and I actually thought it was a normal part of life until I came in contact with the CA, the Correctional Association.
The women that I've met inspire me. I think that I haven't seen or met individuals as courageous as they are, having survived all that they've survived before they get involved in the criminal justice system, and then seeing the system recreate some of the power and control dynamics that they experienced prior to their incarceration, and how they still survive that, and they fight for that, and they fight to have their voices heard. That's what wakes me up and gets me to work.
It has taught me that when you believe in something and you fight for it passionately, it is possible. You don't always win. I found that out. But when I first came here, we got like 3 or 4 victories back to back, and I was part of that. And, you know, it inspired me to stay.
Tú lo que tienes que ser una persona que quiere causar cambio socialmente, positivamente, para la persona que no tiene voz o que no se oye la voz de esa persona.
You know, I'm just celebrating my independence. I have acquired return of my children. I have completed a CASAC-T program. I am now a college student in Bronx Community College. I got my own place. And this is my first Thanksgiving in my own place. I'm like so excited on this journey to just know who Bridget is. You know, just a clean, healthy, sober, great person that I've become, you know, and I love it. And it's due to the Correctional Association being a big part of it. They've been a big inspiration. I've felt like this is where I was supposed to be when I was doing whatever I was doing for the women that couldn't voice it for themselves.